in Adam Bouloukos. He is the director of the UN agency that supports Palestinian refugees in the West Bank. He joins us now live from occupied East Jerusalem. Adam, you're the director of UNRWA in the West Bank, and you're heavily involved in supporting the community there in Jenin. Were you given any warning at all that this was going to happen?
Good evening. We were, and we have fairly loose, not ideal communication lines with the Israeli authorities. They have what they call district liaison officers who communicate with us to some degree on military operations. In this case, we were warned that there was going to be an incursion. We had no idea of the magnitude. It is absolutely colossally destructive. But we were able to, in our case in UNRWA, keep our staff at home, keep our schools closed, health centers closed. So we were at least minimizing the exposure to the staff and to our assets.
Sure. Adam, I wonder if you can describe the camp for us. We're talking about really high population density, and despite the fact that the Israelis are saying that they're really targeting surgical strikes, essentially, how are civilians experiencing these raids?
Yeah, I'm not sure how surgical strikes would work in this kind of environment. Jenin Refugee Camp is one of the most densely populated camps. We have 19 camps running in the West Bank. There are some 23,000 refugees registered in Jenin in an area that's about half a square kilometer. So very densely populated, old structures that are not properly built. There's no real urban planning, urban design to this camp, which was meant to be temporary, but has sat there for many decades, of course. It's very poor. Electricity and infrastructure is already quite bad, and now has been decimated by the recent events.
Adam, you run a health centre in the camp, and I know you say it's been closed during these last 2 days. We've been hearing reports that Israeli troops have been restricting medical access, including to ambulances. Has that been your experience in dealing with other aid agencies there that you're speaking to?
Yeah, well, we have one health center in Jenin. We also have 4 schools. We have other facilities in Jenin camp. We don't run or manage the camps in UNRWA, but we provide services to the refugees who reside in the camps. This health center has continued to be hit. I've been to Jenin several times in the last months, and it always seems that the health center is the target of these different military incursions, because it kind of finds itself in the wrong place. It's right on the kind of the main drag where there's a lot of activity. So the building has continued to be destroyed and rebuilt and fixed over the last 6 to 8 months. Now, on the access to ambulances, UNRWA doesn't run any ambulances, but I do have reports of ambulances that have been restricted in their movement. The other thing is that the camp itself, the roads have been dug up in an effort by the Israelis to find buried explosive devices. And so many of the roads, as we've seen now, seem to be impassable, which will make our humanitarian efforts much more challenging.
Adam, back in 2002, when the Israeli military occupied the camp, then there'd been heavy fighting. I understand that displaced more than a quarter of the camp's population then. I know it's hard to know the extent of the destruction now as the operation is ongoing, but can you give us a sense of your assessment at this stage?
Yeah, the numbers are very hard to assess because we're not able to actually get into the camp. It's just simply too violent, too volatile. But we do know that some 3,000, perhaps 4,000 people have fled the camp. They're being accommodated very graciously by the Jenin community, that is the Jenin city community, put up in hotels and put up in private homes. The community feels that that is the Jenin community has the assets to support them in terms of food and water and things like that, at least in the interim. But it's very hard to know who is remaining in the camp. People are hunkering down. They're being very cautious, obviously, because of the heavy fire, staying at home. So we don't really know, and we don't know which parts of the camp have been most damaged, and we're struggling now to gain access to the camp so we can make informed decisions on what our humanitarian response would look like.
I understand, though, that there has been already huge infrastructure destruction. We've been hearing that from the mayor. UNRWA, your agency, is already facing huge funding problems, which I understand will affect your operations in Gaza too. So where will the money come from to rebuild Jenin?
Well, it's going to have to come from the international community, right? This is a crisis that nobody anticipated, not in this magnitude. We have emergency appeals, as we call them, in the United Nations system. So there will certainly be a call for additional resources. The infrastructure repairs will be significant. As I said, it's already a poorly designed, densely populated mini city. So there'll be quite a lot of work that needs to come. But UNRWA is always facing a financial crisis. It has been for many years of austerity measures. Part of that, I think, is from the as was discussed earlier in the session, the fact that this political conflict, this political situation has not been resolved. UNRWA is coming up on 75 years of anniversary next year, and it's not a time to celebrate. It's a time to recognize an international failure in solving this conflict.
Adam Bouloukos there, the director of UNRWA, the UN agency that supports Palestinian refugees in the West Bank, speaking to us from occupied East Jerusalem. Thank you so much for your time, Adam, and we wish you all the best with your work.
Thank you very much. Good evening.